Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Hello everyone, welcome back to a windy East Riding of Yorkshire. Now today we're beginning this one in a place called Low Catton, and earlier this morning I drove through High Catton. Have a guess what the name of this parish is? Welcome to Catton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Welcome to the parish of Catton, which is located right on the East Riding's boundary with the city of York, the River Derwent between the two. It consists of two villages, High Catton and Low Catton. The Cattons are tiny villages, but they have a detailed history, one which stretches back centuries. Industrially, they were heavily reliant on the Derwent, which used to be fully navigable. In fact, by all accounts, the Cattons were industrially thriving. The two villages have seen gravel pits, brickworks, fisheries and several farms in their time, according to the Catton Heritage Museum. From at least the 13th century, there are reports of many corn mills and fulling mills along both banks of the Derwent here, which were linked by a wath, an old Norse word for a fordable stream. 1,000 years earlier, this area was known to the Romans, thanks to that crossing point in the river. That meant Catton was a place where several Roman roads converged. The two settlements are equally important historically, but Low Catton has most of the main features, including the church, the village hall, and the parish's one and only pub. In the past 100 years, the Cattons have changed almost beyond recognition, but continue to thrive. Housing has greatly increased, but population numbers remain pretty constant. So these are the Catton twins. They may be small, but they've got plenty to talk about. So let's go and see what they've got, shall we? It's said that most people only drive through High Catton to get between two roads, the A1079 and the A166, and heading towards Low Catton is just a wrong turn. High Catton has lots of industrial history. It was the location of a local brickmaking business and later gravel pits in the 1980s. High Catton also had all of the parish's Methodist chapels. The Wesleyans built one here in 1810 and then replaced it with a new one in 1900. Both buildings are now private dwellings, as is the former Primitive Methodist Chapel, which was located at High Catton Crossroads. It closed in 1933. Catton's water supply was sourced from springs near Millington, and most properties had their own wells. At least one of these remains in High Catton, and it's an excellent example of its type. To the south of High Catton is a house, formerly called Land of Nod, where the parish's poorhouses were once located. Our main walk today will focus on Low Catton, which stands next to the Derwent. In terms of size, there's not much between the Cattons, but this has more landmarks. It's not long before we find something of interest. This is one of the East Riding's 100 millennium trees, given by the council at the turn of the century. Not far away is the car park for the village hall, which is separate to the hall itself. The village hall is an old school, which was built in 1841. Between the two sites is a pub, the Gold Cup Inn, which has been in existence since at least 1851. High Catton once had a pub too. It was called the Woodpecker Lass. Here's the old schoolhouse. It was built by Colonel George Wyndham, who was created Baron Leconfield. When it was open, some 20 to 30 children attended school here. It closed in 1923 and then was initially used as a meeting room. In 1939 it was used to cater for wartime evacuees, and it became the village hall in 1955. Okay, I'm battling the wind here today. It's going to be fun trying to put a card on this notice board, because as you can see the wind is whipping everything about. Hopefully I should be able to do it without much trouble. Pin here, that might help. There we go. As long as nothing falls out like it did in Askham Richard. There we go. Catton done. A lot of Catton's history can be discovered inside our next landmark, the old red phone box. It was, for a long time, neglected, derelict, and a bit of an eyesore. However, thanks to the Catton Heritage and Preservation Society, it's now been turned into the Catton Heritage Museum, and it tells you a lot about the parish. For example, this board tells us that the River Derwent was fully navigable, once having a landing stage at the end of Wath Lane, which many businesses made use of. It also mentions a fulling mill, which was demolished in 1605. Various properties are mentioned too, like the manor house and also this one, the old rectory. It tells us too that the Cattons stand on what was a huge deer park, owned by the lords of the manor, the Percy family. These are all things that the average visitor to the Cattons wouldn't necessarily know. We've walked now to the end of the village, so it's time to turn around. Our next stop is the church. So at this northern end of the village you can walk to Stamford Bridge, which is next week's episode by the way, 1.5 miles away down this public footpath here. You get a nice view of the East Yorkshire Wolds as well if you do. However, we are not going that way, we are going back past the old rectory towards the church now. The Church of All Saints is believed to date from the early 13th century. It is by far the oldest building in the parish and the only one constructed of stone. The original structure has been altered and extended many times, with the upper part of the tower being rebuilt in the 15th century. Between 1859 and 1866, the nave and the chancel were restored by the rector, Henry Gardner, and his sisters. The chancel's east window by William Morris is regarded as its jewel in the crown. Other notable features of the church include a tablet on the south wall in memory of Thomas Robinson, the local gamekeeper who was murdered in 1835. In the lane leading to the church are 2 cast iron lamp standards, and in the churchyard there's a third. These are dated 1897 and commemorate Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. Also in the churchyard is the War Memorial, listing the names of the 14 men from the parishes of Catton and Scorby who fell in the 2 World Wars. So the church is locked, so we can't go inside. I've opted just to stand in the porch for a few moments because the wind is howling outside. You've probably heard it in the background of those last few shots. So yeah, we can't go into the church, but we can at least just have a look at its doorway, I suppose. A couple of notice boards, some nice flowers in here. I can actually smell them. They've got a quite strong smell to them. And yeah, it's a nice little church, to be fair. All ends up. Now, from here, we'll be heading back down through the village because this is pretty much the end of it. However, to the north of the church, there's the site of an old Roman town, and that is the subject of today's special section. Immediately to the north of the church was a Roman fort and a minor town known as Derventio. It spanned a large area on both sides of the River Derwent. It's believed it was even bigger than these images suggest. Part of it fell within the modern boundaries of Stamford Bridge and Kexby, as well as Catton. The fort was established in about 70 AD. The town would then develop around it, which was focused on a bridge across the Derwent. It had access to the Roman road network via Cades Road, the route of which can clearly be seen heading north from Stamford Bridge. The name Derwentio, of course, relates to the River Derwent. You may have already guessed that. It literally means oak tree and is of Celtic origin. Interestingly, Derwentio's location is a recent discovery. It was always thought to be located close or under the town of Malton, which is some miles away to the east. It lay undiscovered under arable and pasture fields until quite recently. Okay, so to finish, I've come down Wath Lane and a public footpath which takes you to the Derwent. And here is the River Derwent. This is a dead end, you can't go any further than here. Wow, it is windy down here. I'm going to make this quick because obviously the wind noise is going to affect the audio here. But here's the Derwent. There we go. Looking rather calm compared to the weather, I must admit. And if you walk down that path, there's two farms that you walk between. That one there is Catton turkeys, and this one here is the old granary, which has got an alpaca shed apparently. I noticed that as I walked down the path. So there you go, there's alpacas here in Catton. Who would have thought that? And there you go, that is the parish of Catton, a very small one, and one that would probably be better if the wind wasn't howling so much. Wow, I'm getting wind sweat. Hopefully it dies down by the time I get to the next one. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot. This has been the parish of Catton, and I'm out.